You wake up exhausted. Your stomach is in knots, your chest is tight, and you are trapped in a state of constant anxiety. The relationship is officially over, but your mind is still racing, trying to piece together a reality that keeps fracturing. You just survived a cycle of emotional whiplash. 1 month, you were idealized, the perfect partner, the savior they always needed. The next, you were discarded, devalued, and blamed for everything that went wrong. Now, you are drained from trying to fix a connection built on shifting realities. You are desperate for an apology, an explanation, or just basic closure. But you are seeking that closure from someone whose own internal world is entirely unstable. They cannot give it to you. Because you can't get answers from them, you have to look elsewhere. High-quality trauma and psychology literature becomes your lifeline. These books provide the objective, safe reflection of reality that your relationship denied you. There is a heavy trade-off to this process. At first, you will read these books to figure out what is wrong with your ex, but eventually, the pages will force you to confront your own codependent behaviors. You will have to stop pointing the finger outward and start examining why you stayed. Recovery literature serves as a mirror that forces you to face yourself, moving you past the circular urge to decode your ex-partner. To understand why you stayed, we have to look at the core psychological dynamic at play. A borderline or narcissistic partner is trying to outrun a deep internal void. They seek a caregiver to manage their emotions and fill that emptiness. On the other side of that equation is the codependent partner. By becoming indispensable, by endlessly sacrificing and fixing, you secure your own sense of self-esteem. You become the savior. This recovery roadmap categorizes literature by your specific trauma stage. Reading out of order causes severe overwhelm. Fresh out of the relationship, you belong in phase 1. Jumping into somatic trauma work during an active crisis only triggers more panic. All of the books on this roadmap are valuable, but their ability to actually help you depends on applying the right framework at the exact right stage of your journey. Phase 1 focuses on decoding the pathology of borderline and narcissistic personality disorders. You will learn clinical terms for what you experienced, like splitting, where you are either all good or all bad, and projection, where they accuse you of the exact things they are doing. The primary benefit of this phase is cognitive validation. You finally get proof that the emotional storms, the rage, and the chaos were symptoms of a disorder. You realize none of it was actually your fault. But looking at this comparison matrix, we see the major trade-off. You can easily get stuck in the armchair psychologist trap. Notice how the focus remains on the partner, serving as a way to avoid your own pain. When you endlessly analyze your ex-partner's every move, diagnosing their texts and dissecting their childhood, you create an intellectualized trauma bond. You are still organizing your entire mental life around them, distracting yourself from the real work of your own healing. Understanding the mechanics of the disorder is a necessary stepping stone to regain your sanity, but studying someone else's illness will never cure your trauma. That brings us to phase 2, the caretaking texts. Here, the focus shifts away from your ex-partner's pathology and zooms in on your own pathological altruism. As we can see in this source text, you have to acknowledge a hard truth. Your massive, unending sacrifices were actually a form of control. You are trying to manage their moods to keep yourself safe, and you have to admit that you cannot fix their pain. The positive outcome of facing this is immense. By accepting that you cannot control them, you immediately reclaim your personal agency. You step off the treadmill and finally stop the cycle of emotional exhaustion. This realization brings a difficult trade-off, the resulting grief. When you accept that you couldn't save them, you're hit with a wave of guilt. You realize that all your effort, all the years you sacrificed, didn't actually fix the relationship. True healing cannot begin until you mourn the fantasy that your love alone was powerful enough to cure a personality disorder. To pull yourself out of that grief, you have to change your orientation to the world. You must shift from constantly monitoring your ex-partner's moods to enforcing firm, internal boundaries. This text defines what a boundary actually is in this context. It's an invisible separation that dictates where your thoughts, feelings, and needs begin and end. It is a firm declaration of, I am this and I am not that. When you set these limits, you establish a distinct sense of self. You start to discover who you actually are when you aren't relying on being needed or useful to someone who abuses your generosity. Be prepared for the backlash from your own brain. Breaking your ingrained habit of appeasing others will make you feel selfish. You will experience severe emotional discomfort when you finally say no. Tolerating that intense, temporary guilt is the price of reclaiming your personal sovereignty. Once your boundaries are set, you reach phase 3, core wound literature. This is where you face the concept of toxic shame, the internal defectiveness that predates this abusive relationship entirely. There is a distinction between guilt and toxic shame. Guilt tells you that you made a mistake. Toxic shame is the deep-seated, agonizing belief that you are a mistake. By doing this work, you dissolve the belief that you are inherently worthless. You uproot the exact vulnerability that attracted you to a volatile relationship in the first place. This phase requires a painful trade-off. You have to drop all of your intellectual defenses and willingly sit with raw feelings of rejection and inadequacy, letting them exist without trying to numb them. Eradicating toxic shame proves to your internal system that your worth was never tied to an abusive partner's approval. None of this psychological work matters if you aren't physically safe. You must implement ruthless digital and physical boundaries. Change your passwords, block their numbers on every platform, and build a fortress to ensure you cannot be re-traumatized. In the short term, maintaining this absolute zero-contact fortress will hurt. You will experience psychological withdrawal symptoms, obsessive thinking, and intense separation anxiety. Looking at this excerpt on somatic healing, we enter phase 4. This addresses the physical toll the relationship took on your body, resulting in symptoms like chronic muscle tightness. The goal is to release the trapped survival energy that kept you hypervigilant for years. Healing on a biological level is slow. It is subtle, non-linear, and it cannot be rushed by merely thinking your way out of it. Real recovery takes place in the body. You cannot outthink a traumatized nervous system. This quadrant chart maps effort against recovery impact. If freshly discarded, focus on low-effort, high-safety actions like boundary literature. If physically safe but obsessively ruminating, graduate to codependency texts. Finally, if you feel physical panic, move to high-effort work, somatic recovery. The ultimate goal of this healing process is to elevate yourself out of the narcissist's narrative, evict them from your mind, and become the primary player in your own story again. To find the specific books for your current stage, download the specialized guide and workbook at traumaunbonded.com, linked in the description below. And please like, share, and subscribe to help others find this roadmap. Leaving the relationship was simply about survival. Navigating this roadmap is how you will actually reclaim your life.